Hi everyone, and welcome to Adobe Max, and welcome to this Meet the Speaker session. My name is Chris Hansen, and I'll be your host for today. And I'm joined by our very special guest, who is a visual artist and a muralist, Frankie Cihi, and she's based in Tokyo. Welcome, Frankie.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Frankie.
Awesome. Now, can you just describe yourself to everyone who doesn't really know who you are or familiar with your work?
Sure. So I'm a visual artist from Tokyo. I specialize in murals, paintings, live paintings. I often do live painting for corporate events and music festivals and fashion shows and things like that. And I also paint on darumas. There are these Japanese craft things that you can see on my Instagram. So I do all kinds of stuff, but I'm a painter at heart, so I just usually tell people I'm a painter.
Yeah, awesome. So I've got a couple of questions to ask you in this session that we've kind of collated ourselves, but everyone in the chat, by all means, throw some questions in and I'll make sure to ask Frankie some of those. And I want to start with, so obviously your culture, you're from Japan and you also have an American background as well. Do you try and mix both cultures in your work when it comes to, producing that?
Absolutely. So I grew up in Japan, and spending a lot of my childhood in Tokyo, I was really inspired by Japanese textiles and kimono patterns and origami. So I think I incorporate a lot of the Japanese elements, Japanese patterns and textiles into my work. As you can see in my background, I'll use very colorful pop color palettes. That's more inspired from the West and also nature, from the natural world as well. But I always include something that's a little Japanese into my work, whether that's in the textiles or patterns or flatness. A lot of my patterns are very flat. So I think that's how I incorporate my heritage into my work.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it kind of leads me into my next question. Where do you get your inspiration for each mural, or do you actually work towards a brief?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. When I'm just doing things for myself, obviously I don't really have to stick to a concept or a brief, but it has to be a little bit of both at all times. If I'm just working through inspiration and if I'm just free flowing, which I usually do when I'm painting for myself, that's totally fine. And I find new things doing things that way. But oftentimes I do a lot of corporate collaborations, and usually I'm working with a brand, and that brand is selling a specific product. So I have that in mind. If I'm painting a piece for a mural, that mural is going to be out in public. So I always think about, how my work is going to blend in with that community as well. And then I find new ways of expressing myself through these collaborations as well.
Yeah, awesome. So we've got a couple of questions that have come in from the community chat. Are you ready?
Yay.
Brace yourself.
Yeah.
So this first one from Jacomi, they said, loved what you shared. Thank you. What paint do you normally use, and how do you actually charge clients?
Right. Wow. Okay. Excellent questions. Getting down to the nitty gritty. All right. So usually I would use acrylic paints, and I have a lot of different types of acrylic paint. So when I'm just painting on canvas, I could also use gouache. But that same kind of paint will be too weak for an exterior wall. So I would use outdoor paints. And I use a Japanese brand called Turner, and they have a wonderful brand of outdoor paints. And indoor paints, you can use a combination of outdoor, because outdoor paints become very expensive and they're very heavy. So I use a combination of indoor paints and outdoor paints, but it's acrylic based. So it's all water soluble. And it's very easy to clean up afterwards. So I really recommend acrylic-based outdoor paints for anybody who's interested in painting murals for the first time. As for, how I set my rates, that's a very difficult question for me to answer, because there's so many ways that I could sort of work towards making something for somebody. But, the complexity of the design, the more complex it is, the more I can charge for that. The number of colors that I use, I have to pay for one can of paint that costs money. So you can charge them based on how much materials you're going to be using, and also the size, right? So if it's a large scale mural, obviously you can charge like 10x for that. So there's so many factors that go into pricing. And also I also do something like, you know, this mural, like for 6 months, like if there's any damage to it, I'll repaint it for free. But after the 6-month period, I'll charge extra for like painting over it. So there's so many ways you can add to that list of things you invoice. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
interesting.
I'm not gonna tell you my rate here.
No, that's fine. You know,
Yeah.
speaking of, you mentioned the size of your murals in your video that we saw earlier. I noticed that you were climbing scaffolding with no safety harnesses. How do you find painting in those types of conditions?
I love it. I love it. So I think I started painting murals for the thrill of it. Like, it's really scary multitasking up there. One small mistake, you can literally, you know, fall and lose your life. And I've been in many near-death experiences before. Really scary stuff. There was one mural I did in West Palm Beach, Florida, where I was wearing a safety harness, but somebody removed the safety cables from up top. So if we were a little bit overweight, over the limit, we would have fallen off.
Oh
Me and like 3 other people. So I've had to face so many different kinds of challenges, you know, with being safe up there.
Yeah, of course.
But I tend to like, you know, extreme sports and putting myself in extreme conditions. It makes me really feel like I'm alive. You know, it's something different. So yeah, but usually I do try to wear a harness and hard hat, no matter what kind of mural that is. That Philippines one was kind of special.
Of course. We've got a bunch of questions coming in.
Let's go.
I'm just going to start with this one. Alice Lee, what was the first mural you ever painted?
Hi, Alice. The first mural I painted was when I was 22. It was for a share house in Tokyo. And for that, I used a projector. And from beginning to end, it was the exact same drawing that I had in my sketchbook, you know. So there were a lot of things that I learned from that. But yeah, you can still see it. It's still here in Japan. I'll post a picture of it later in my stories. That's
awesome.
That's good. So if anybody's interested, yeah, come by my Instagram later.
Cool. And we got one here from Matthew. How do you go about connecting with a corporate brand to work with them?
Well, usually this is what I do. You know, they send me an email or they give me an offer to work with them. So they must have seen something in me that they liked. So you usually ask them if they could select 3 to 5 images from my Instagram that they like, that they think could work for this particular collaboration. And then I can expand from there. So I do a lot of asking questions in the beginning. I also ask them who their target audience is. And, you know, I ask them what they want to get out of this collaboration. So I kind of have an idea myself, you know, who I'm creating for and what it's for. So that's kind of how I go about designing for people.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, a couple more coming through. They're coming in hot. What do we got here? Catherine, any types of designs or patterns that you found don't work as well when scaling for murals? That's a really good question.
Yeah, it really depends on the surface you're working with. So if it's a rough surface, blending works actually, and doing these like fine lines sometimes doesn't work on a very rough surface. So I try to steer clear of doing very intricate, detailed lines. And on the other hand, if it's a smooth surface, when you try to blend in the colors, you can see the streaks. So like I try to make color blocking or color, you know, solid color fillings than doing blendings, and also the fine details work better on smooth surfaces. So, and then if there are beams, you know, like in that Cebu mural, like I want to try to steer clear of doing those fine lines over the beams. So I look at the structure of the wall and the material before I actually start designing.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned in your talk, I feel like that's where your 3 simple steps would come into play, right? But is it the same? Is it the same for every project, or do you have to adapt for each one? I mean, those 3 simple steps. Yeah, I
do have to adapt, and I do recommend people use projectors. But you know, oftentimes when you're outside, you can't find an outlet, and it's also, you know, outdoors, so you don't want to be bringing your projector out there either. So when that happens, I try to make eyeball stuff, and I try to put like masking tape in different positions of the wall. You know, if there's a certain, you know, if you're painting a portrait, you know, maybe you could do the masking tape for where the eyes are going to be, the nose, and then you can use chalk. And then when you step back, you can see if that works for you. So when I painted the giant mural for a parking lot, I used masking tape to mark out like where the mountaintops were going to be. So there are different techniques that I use for each mural. I try to be as flexible as possible.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, we got one here from Jeff. He says, your video was great. Thank you. What is the most challenging project you have taken on? And bonus question, what is the highest up you have ever painted?
Yes, so it's the same project. So the highest I've ever been was probably on the 6th floor of a parking lot. These parking lot murals are so, I feel like I got like 5 years taking off of my lifespan because I just stressed over it so much. And it was just me. Usually muralists have a team of painters working with them, but I prefer to work alone. So that takes a lot of time, you know, because I like to do things on my own terms in my own way. And I don't really like giving people direction or orders because I don't know, I'm just not good at that. So for me, that Florida project, as well as the Takasaki parking lot project, it really taught me that I have to actually learn how to delegate. Otherwise, the project is not going to get done on time. And so working with people, that was the most challenging project. Working with people on large scale walls, communicating exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and coming up with a method. That was the hardest part for me. And the highest was 6 floors. So there's a few pictures of me up on the scaffolding. It was a lift for the Florida one, but it's pretty high up there. Yeah, I can only explain it to you in photographs. I'm not good with numbers. The 6th floor. So
no, it's interesting what you say about, you know, working solo, you know, because essentially when you think about it, too many cooks, right? It goes back to that old saying, too many cooks spoil the broth and things like that. I got a question for you. You mentioned that you use Photoshop, but have you thought about working in Adobe Fresco as well?
I have, yeah. So it was one of these Adobe events that I got to learn from other creators, and they recommended Fresco. And I love it. It's fantastic. It's like, you know, Photoshop meets Illustrator, and it's such a nice blend of the two different programs that you can use. So I do use Fresco sometimes when I sketch out ideas as well. I recommend it for anybody who likes to paint and draw on Photoshop.
Fresco is amazing, and there's been some updates that have come out that has included animations as well. It looks incredible.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah,
Awesome.
You should get in there and do some animations for your murals. If only that could be projected on the walls, that you could do that.
Definitely up and coming. Yeah, for sure. I'm working on that right now. We'll talk about that later, maybe at the end.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Okay, I've got a couple of questions here. How important is the surrounding environment of the mural?
I would say it's very important, yes, because maybe, you know, if there's a tree in front of it, it's going to be blocking the mural. Or if there's, you know, some sort of building in front of it that has historical significance, like I would like to incorporate the story of that place and make it site specific, whether that's like, you know, through the structure, so that maybe the tree is blocking the wall. I don't want that blocking the main feature. And also through the meaning, right? The context behind that wall. Maybe it's on a historical site. So I would like to include something of that place into the design of the work. So I would say that the environment is like, it is the mural. You know, it goes hand in hand. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because you mentioned the environment. Obviously, there'll be some environmental challenges that go with that, right? Such as weather.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. So how do you actually plan around that? Let's say you've got a time slot booked in for a specific, I'm not sure, like week to paint it. But what if that week is just washed out because it's raining?
Well, then we would have to reschedule. Sometimes clients have built like an awning for me, but I would just prefer to work when it's sunny out or when there's enough wind so that the mural would dry faster. Oftentimes when it's raining, even if you have like something up top, it's just too moist, it's too wet outside, and then I cannot, the paint won't dry. So that's why it's really important to be focused and to work as fast as possible. when it comes to murals, painting murals outdoors. So
yeah, definitely. Yep. That would be quite challenging when you obviously work into the deadlines and things get pushed out. All right, I've got a question for you. What is one piece of advice for aspiring illustrators or creatives?
Oh, like in general, to do something every day, to think about creating something every day. Obviously, that's, that it really will get you somewhere if you continue to do it every day. And even on those off days when you're not feeling inspired, just the fact that you're thinking, oh, I'm really not inspired today, that's going to get you closer to being inspired because you're thinking about it. And so that's my advice, is to just continue.
Awesome. I've got a question here from Michael. Have you done any mountain climbing for inspiration? You mentioned extreme sports, but also have you painted any ceilings?
Oh my gosh, I hate ceilings. I want to say never again, but if there's like a really nice ceiling, I'm going to want to paint it. But yeah, ceiling paintings really just are so hard on your neck and your back.
I can imagine.
So that's a project that you shouldn't do alone. You should definitely work with a team because it's really difficult to get up there. So, and I do love sports. I love outdoor activities. I was just hiking 2 days ago. I was on a mountain and taking pictures. I just love being outside in nature. I think a lot of my inspiration comes from nature as well. And it's really important, I think, for artists to stay connected, especially if you're working on software and looking at screens. You need to unplug sometimes. So
you know what? I can definitely relate to that, especially during this pandemic, right, where we've all had to adapt, change, work from home, collaborating via screens like we're doing now. Normally we'd be live somewhere and talking in person, which is what we all miss, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think that's really good advice, especially to get out. I've got a question for you. How have you found transitioning from sketching in a notebook to sketching in Photoshop on an iPad digitally?
I think the transition was really quite seamless. I've been painting on computers since I was a kid. From with the mouse, so like on different types of software. So I don't know, for me, it came really easy. And also the tablet is just such an intuitive product. And, I use an Apple Pen and it's just so nice. I prefer drawing on the tablet on my iPad than sketching in real life sometimes for certain things, because you can get those nice crisp lines and you can already draw in color, and erasing, undoing things is so easy. So sometimes when I'm sketching on paper, I do like the zoom in with my hands, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is paper, I can't.
And you know what? I probably would do the same, because you're so used to it, you just go, well, what am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? So, yep, digital natives.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a question for you. During the pandemic, how have you gotten creative inspiration for perhaps your next project?
Well, because I was spending a lot of time indoors, especially this year, more so than last year, I actually started experimenting with AR because I thought, oh my gosh, like I love painting murals because it's something for the masses. I love creating for the masses. And I thought it would be so much fun if I can create an Instagram filter, because that's what everyone's doing nowadays. So I just strapped myself down to my chair and I learned how to do AR in 4 hours. I did a crash course and then I made something very primitive, but it's on my Instagram now. You can use it. It's called orbs. I
That's
thought it
amazing.
would be fun for Halloween. It's like these little spirit blobs that come out of your screen. So I'm learning how to do more complex AR, things that are more form-fitted to your face. And so that's why when you said animation earlier on Fresco, I thought, ooh, maybe I could link the two and make something more complex. So I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. I want to come back to animation, but we've got a question here from Jack. If you could paint a mural in any country, which one would it be?
What? Oh my gosh, I don't know. I would go anywhere for a mural. But I would love to go to Well, I was in Turkey last year. I was in Istanbul, and I thought there were so many cool buildings. And, you know, the religion there is really interesting, right? There's so much history there. I don't know. I don't know if people would consider it cultural appropriation if I started doing, like, you know, using different patterns that aren't necessarily Japanese, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to incorporate different motifs that I find there. So yeah, Istanbul, that area, cool place.
Yeah, awesome. Just got a couple more questions before we wrap. I got one for you. How do you get noticed by big brands like Google and Apple?
Yeah, so it doesn't happen overnight, you know. You do have to continue to work on your craft. Like I was saying earlier, like it is really important that you continue to show yourself and present yourself to the public as an artist. And you start small, you start from scratch, so you can collaborate with local brands or local, you know, just friends, you know, and just work there. Start small. And as you're working, you're going to start to pick up momentum at some point, and that's when all the collaborations happen. So it's a little bit of hard work and luck, but it will, and it can happen, you know, if you stay. I've been doing this for over 10 years. So
awesome.
Yeah, so that's all I can say.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, we've got a question from Jacomi. What AR 4 hours course did you do? Could you give any links or advice, maybe?
Yeah, it's the one on Facebook, because I was like, I want to do Instagram filters. So I just Googled how do you do, and it's called Spark. It's called something Spark AR Studio. So that's the one that I use, and I just learned everything inside Spark. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Last question. We'll go with one more. Very quick. How much time do you spend in Photoshop coloring for a project?
As much time as I need to do it.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Frankie, for your time. It's been great chatting to you and getting to know you a bit more. Everyone, it's great to see you guys, even though it's not in real life. Please stay tuned for the next session that I have with my colleague, Jason Grant. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Bye.